Well, welcome along to Snetterton, everybody, under pretty much beautiful blue skies. We've got the first of two races today for the brand new for 2023 Bell Sports Challenge Series coming up on the full configuration as well. So we're on the Snetterton 300 circuit, so it's just under 3 miles long. It's 2.969 miles. The cars are already just making their way onto the grid, and for this brand new series that's coordinated by Tom King, who represents Bell Sport and Classic Limited, based in just outside of St Albans. It caters for a whole different range of Ferrari Tipos, so whether it be the 360 in challenge specification, so as would have been raced in the Ferrari Challenge in period when the 360 was the modern car. It also caters for 430 challenge cars, for 458 challenge cars, and even for the newer 488 challenge cars, but it's got to be the original configuration, the non-Evo version of the 488. So it allows Ferraris that are no longer of current specification to all come together and enjoy racing with like-minded individuals as well. And what we have is a range of those different Tipos on the grid. So the likes of a 488 on pole. It's not the only 488 on the grid. We've got 458, we've got 430s, and we've got 360s as well. So the BMW safety car is going to head off, and then the grid will make its way around. And now the man who qualified on pole position, Peter Smith, lost his two best lap times in qualifying because he was transgressing the circuit limits. But even though he'd lost his two best lap times, he was still good enough to qualify on pole position to the tune of nearly 9/10 of a second. So all bodes well for him. We're hoping we can give you a grid. If we can't get the graphic, we'll do it manually. We should be able to give you the grid now then, as they head there around the circuit in advance of this 30-minute race. And the way that they line up is that Peter Smith is there on pole position, and Nigel Jenkins sits alongside. It's Darren Goes and Richard Dougal that sit there on row number 2. The third row of the grid, Matthew Wilton and Mick Dwayne sit there on row number 3, and row 4 is Vance Kearney and then Nick Carey that are there on row number 4. The fifth row of the grid is Giuseppe Coletti, and for company he's got Tim Cairns, with then the next row of the grid being on the inside, Michael O'Sullivan, and Chris Compton-Goddard should be next up, who I think had problems in qualifying, and I don't think we saw a great deal of Chris over the course of the qualification session. So those cars sit there on the 6th row of the grid. Piers Pryor joins me in the commentary box. Piers, we saw these cars for the first ever racing weekend at Donington Park. Nice to see a new series come out. Nice to see Ferraris race. Yeah, we saw them at Donington, and they did look great on circuit, and it's great to see so many Ferraris of so many different shapes, sizes and ages out all racing together, and that's what this championship, of course, is all about, and why it has come into fruition. But Snetterton on a sunny late spring day. Is it summer yet, Mark? It finally feels like it's summer. It hasn't done for nearly a month, has it? I nearly put the heating on this week. It was so cold. Yeah, nearly summer day is. I mean, what more could you want? No, loads of Ferraris driving around. A great circuit, and the Snetterton 300 circuit will suit these because it's got some tight and twisty bits in the infield, but also those two long straights, the start-finish straight and the back straight, to really let them sort of open up. Yep, so we say it caters for non-different Tipos. It's just a series of races. There's no points accumulation. There's no champions to be crowned at the end of this one. It's a rolling start for these cars as well. The grid for the second race later on will be based on the finishing order from this one as well. It's open tyre choice, open compounds as well. You are limited for the amount of tyres that you can utilise over the course of a weekend. And when it comes to minimum weights on the car, well, they just have to conform with the appropriate factory challenge regulations that were in place at the time as well. So it's nice to see this beautiful range of cars. As I alluded to, you know, these are cars that, you know, it's not the current iteration of cars, so they don't really have a home to race in. So this has created a home for cars that otherwise would sit in the garage. It's nice to see them being out there, being used for what they were built for. Yeah, all these cars were the challenge cars of the period that car was from, of course, and some of them are newer. Like, for example, the cars at the front of the field are somewhat more modern than potentially some of the ones at the back, but that doesn't mean they're any better or worse. It just means that you know, it's great to see these cars racing, and the drivers who have them, or the owners of the cars, can have an opportunity to race them, or at least let someone you know, drive them as they should be driven on circuit. And the safety cars coming across the start-finish line now, I believe. I think we're going to give them 2 formation laps, yeah. I wasn't expecting that, but looks like we're going to get 2 formation laps for these cars, which gives them a bit more opportunity to build some tyre temp in. I mean, it's a warm day anyway, but these tyres will go on cold. They won't be preheated for the Ferraris, will they? So it's a sensible idea to give them a couple of laps just to build that core tyre temperature. Yes, exactly, because they're pretty big tyres, so from ambient,
because the ambient temperature isn't hugely hot today. The sun is lovely and it doesn't feel too cold, but yeah, getting as much heat in those tyres and brakes will allow the drivers to push from lap 1 in the safest way possible for both the racing and also the machinery.
When we gave you the grid, we mentioned that Chris Compton-Goddard was at the back of the grid and had problems in qualifying, but the last car I can see heading around the circuit is that car there, which is the number 8 car of Michael O'Sullivan. So it looks as though whatever the problems were for Chris Compton-Goddard in qualifying, he has not made it out, so albeit he was shown on the grid graphic that we showed you. Let's give you a few colours of the cars on the grid so you can pick them out. The car that sits on pole position, Peter Smith, it's black with white and pink and light blue flashes on it, depending on which side you look at the car, because it's painted pink on one side, it's light blue on the other, which is very confusing. And alongside him is the largely yellow and black car of Nigel Jenkins. Row 2 of the grid, again, it's sort of yellow and black, really, for Darren Goes, and alongside him is the white and light green machine of Richard Dougal. Row 3 of the grid, it's red with a black roof for Matthew Wilton, alongside the largely yellow car, but it's got some subtle red flashes of livery down the side of it, which is going to be the car of Mick Dwayne, and that gives you the colours on the first few rows of the grid. The Donington Park winner, 2 dominant victories for Wayne Mars. He's not on the grid this weekend, Piers.
No, so it gives everyone else an opportunity to have a go at an overall victory. Of course, there are different cars in the group, so you'll have a car to race against, some of which will be different speeds in different areas. Some of them might be a bit faster in the straight line, some of them might be a different speed around the corners, but a lot of the cars are quite close in qualifying as well.
Yep, so qualifying this morning, 2 cars sub 2 minutes. Peter Smith was a 1 minute 59.007, and Nigel Jenkins was a 1:59.873. Those 2 cars were about 3.5 seconds quicker than anybody else in qualifying. So if qualifying is anything to go by, we can expect those 2 cars to pull away, but it should be a good squabble thereafter for maybe the next 3 places, and then a bit of a gap, and then another squabble for the final few places. And it's a bit like we saw at Donington. Dominant victories from Wayne Mars, but some great battles elsewhere through the order. So they're now just starting to get themselves into 2x2 order. And have we got another car missing off the front row of the grid? I think we might have. Is Nigel Jenkins not there? Let's just have a quick look. We'll try and pick him out as they come through. But I think Peter Smith is there, but one of the yellow and black cars, either Nigel Jenkins or Darren Goes, I don't think I saw there. So, neat 2x2 order. The red lights are on the gantry. 30-minute race is about to get underway. So the 3rd ever race for the Bell Sports Challenge Series. Red lights on the gantry. Lights go out now, and they head up towards Richie's corner with Peter Smith in the lead of the race. And it's going to be Darren Goes who's there in 2nd position, with Richard Dougal slotting his way through into 3rd place. Matthew Wilton going wheel to wheel with Mick Dwayne, as Mick Dwayne runs very wide coming out of the corner, bounces over the curb at the wheel of his 360, but is able to continue without too much of a problem. I think it was Nigel Jenkins was missing off the front row of the grid.
It's a shame to see one of the drivers off. We've got now someone else off towards the back of the field. Looks like some sort of mechanical there with the smoke and flames billowing out the back of the car, so the driver will have to jump out of that very, very quickly. The marshal's already getting the equipment safe, or the safety equipment ready there, but hopefully that is all sorted very swiftly. But the rest of the races, or the rest of the drivers, are carrying on for the rest of the lap until they see anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So race continues in the meantime. That'll be dealt by the marshals at that point. Couldn't quite tell which car it was for the moment. There's a couple of white cars in the field, so we'll work that one out as and when we can understand that all has been dealt with. But the race continues in the meantime, with Peter Smith already starting to pull away. So the driver is out of the car, I can confirm that to you. The safety car is being called as well, so we are going safety car because of that Ferrari and the incident that occurred up at Richie's corner.
Yes, it looks like it wasn't really any contact from what we could see. Everyone was pretty well behaved in Riches and up towards the first corner. It may be just something not quite right, or a pipe coming loose or something like that on the car. Often these big incidents like this can often be caused something so small. Yeah, just a small little leak of fuel onto the exhaust, or even onto a brake disc or something like that can soon ignite. And on a warm day, park the car on the grass, then all of a sudden you can end up with dry grass igniting as well. But as ever, brilliant work by the driver to pull it straight away over onto the circuit. Very quickly realised that he needed to be exiting the car, and equally as much as ever, the fantastic marshals here at Snetterton instantly will have dealt with that incident. They'd have pulled the pin on the fire extinguisher. You utilise a dry powder extinguishant straight away, a really fine powder that smothers. There we can see the car smouldering away at the moment, but some of that will be residual dust, so you use a dry powder extinguishant straight away to suffocate the fire. There's the driver out and absolutely fine.
It was number 8, which is Michael O'Sullivan, that is shaking his head. So you suffocate the fire with that dry powder. So that cuts off the oxygen. You know, that fire triangle that we all learnt about at school, that cuts off the oxygen and suffocates it. So that quickly knocks the fire down. However, it doesn't have any cooling properties, so there's still that residual heat which can cause a bit of reignition. And then what happens is, after you've used the dry powder extinguishant, then the marshals will go in with what is called an AFFF fire extinguisher. That stands for aqueous film forming foam, and that is a water-based extinguishant which has a chemical in it which not only then, because it's water-based, cools the fire down, it also forms a film over it which also then helps to suffocate the fire, and then you get less reignition then.
There you go. You know, all of the information there from Mark.
You've learned something, haven't you?
Well, I did a first aid course not that long ago, and I knew that these things existed, but no way I could retain that much information, Mark. But the marshals will know just as much as you, and they'll be right on the scene. And we saw, even before the car had stopped, the marshals readying their equipment and being on the scene. So it would have been a matter of seconds. That's
why the British Marshals are the best. You know, their training that they get, you know, they're all volunteers, but, you know, it's a very structured training that takes place over the course of largely the off-season in the winter, but there are training days as well, where you learn about not just the theory side of it, but it's the practical side as well. So if you are one of the course marshals, you will either with a metal tray which they'll fill with fuel and ignite, or sometimes it's a car that's had all the windows and all of the fabrics taken out of it as well, that they will set a light to, so you can practice that. You know, it's very rare it happens, very rare indeed, but you practice what you need to do as a team going in to extinguish these fires as and when they occur.
Yeah, because there's often you say they are rare, and they are rare these days in motorsport, which we're very lucky with, because of course a lot of safety measures have been put in place over the years, but you need to be prepared when it does happen, because it's kind of the worst case scenario, isn't it? A car bursting into complete flames. And you can see today that the training has all gone very well.
Yeah, absolutely. So nice to see Michael O'Sullivan out of the car. That incident will be dealt with. That's just run you down through the order at the moment. Whilst we are under safety car, Peter Smith continues to lead the way. Darren Goes is second. So it's the number 5 car that leads, and 22 of Darren Goes that's second. Then it's 83, which is Richard Dougal, who's there in 3rd place. 4th place is Matthew Wilton. That's the number 23 car that's largely red with the black roof. Mick Dwayne in his yellow number 77 car is there in 5th place, and completing the top 6 is, I said Michael O'Sullivan, but he's showing as being in 6th place, Michael O'Sullivan, so it must be Vance Kearney then, rather, I should say. Vance Kearney, I do apologise. We got car number 108 and car number 8, and they're both white, so I apologise, I misidentified the car, so no, it's Vance Kearney that has brought about this safety car period, but as we say, he is out of the car and absolutely fine. And as for class leaders at the moment, well, leading class 4, which is for the 488s, is the overall race leader Peter Smith. Leading class 2, which is for the Ferrari 430 spec cars, is going to be Richard Dougal. Leading class 1, which is for the 360s, is long-time Ferrari racer, but we do see him out in things like Renault Clio's, Mick Dwayne. And then, do we have any cars that run in class 3?
Second place. Oh, no, wait,
that's class 2, isn't it?
Because Nigel hasn't taken the start.
No, we don't have any cars in class 3 now, no, because Nigel Jenkins didn't take the start. Vance Kearney is the car that's at the side of the track, and Chris Compton Goddard didn't appear. So we've lost our cars, I'm afraid, from class 3, which is for the 458s.
A number of different cars, as you mentioned. They all look great. That's one thing that is a guarantee with this series. You're going to see some stunning looking cars, and the cars are prepared really excellently. I mean, we love the liveries they've got on them, and the different liveries that you can see throughout the field. Of course, a lot of them in the well-known Ferrari red, but we've also got some yellow ones and some bespoke liveries, and then that black one, which looks very cool with the Italian flag on the roof as well.
Yeah, the Italian tricolore flag on the roof. I love Peter Smith's car because it's very different for a Ferrari. For it to be sort of, you know, whatever it is, it's really dark blue, isn't it? Almost looking black in this sunlight with white and pink and light blue. It's a whole range of colours, but it certainly stands out, that car.
It works. I like an asymmetric livery if it's done well, with different colours on left and right.
But as a commentator, you need to remember that, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, it does get very confusing.
Because you can go through one corner and think, is that them or is that not? And then they turn left and you go, oh no, that's someone else. Luckily, there aren't too many light blue or pink cars on this grid.
No. The only problem usually with Ferrari races is lots of red ones, and you need to identify that the subtle changes in each one of the red liveries. But yeah, thankfully, yeah, it's not too bad with this one. So still under safety car. We will get that cleared as soon as we possibly can. The good thing is that it's not too bad. There's gaps in the barriers there where we can get the car out of harm's way. But as you can see, there's still a raft of circuit vehicles that are there. The rescue unit there as well, just on hand, should the driver just need checking over, just to check that there's not been any issues at all whilst the car was still rolling and the driver was able to get out, they'll just have a quick check that everything is good. And the other thing they do need to do, Piers, yes, the fire is out, but they then also just need to make sure, is that car still leaking a little bit of fuel, or what caused the fire? Because what we don't want is any reignition, but equally as much, we've got the environmental aspects of just making sure that we're then not leaking fluid onto the ground, which are going to seep into water courses and things like that.
Absolutely, and also not doing any environmental damage, but also they don't want to drag the car, for example, onto the track as well, because then if there's any liquid leaking out of it into the track, then we'd have to clear that up. And of course the marshals are thinking ahead of these sort of things, because they want to get racing as soon as they can, just like the drivers and us in the performance box and everyone at home watching as well.
The other thing I like about this Bell Sports Challenge series is that you can see the evolution of the T-pose as well. So you look at the 360 going round, and then you can look at a 430 and see how the DNA is still there, but it's moved on as technology moved on and car design moved on. Then you look at the 430 and think, okay, yeah, but that you can see how that's influenced the design of the 458, and then the 458 becomes the 488, doesn't it? And you can see that the fact that, of course, fundamentally the design has changed, but the main Ferrari DNA is still there amongst all of the T-posts that we see.
Oh, it completely is. I mean, as a shot demonstrating it already, you've got almost the cars going down somewhat in order, and you can really see it's a very similar shaped car. They're very similar style cars, and I think Ferrari kind of figured out that they had something pretty special with the 360, and then kind of carried it on, didn't they, really? And a lot of the designers will overlap, and that's why they are all so kind of unique and good-looking cars in their own way. Yeah,
and we also had the 355, didn't we, before that? 355, and was it the 348, I think, was the first ever challenge spec car, wasn't it? I think when the Ferrari Challenge first came out, I think it was the 348, if memory serves me correctly. Then it went 355, and then it goes 360, 430, 458, 488.
You know more than I do, Mark.
I might be making it up as I'm going along. Some of the Ferrari aficionados, I'm sure, will let us know, but I'm sure, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And these days, you've got the new 296, is it? 298?
The 296, which is the latest GT3 spec car, which is racing in GT World Challenge Europe and was going well at Brands Hatch a few weeks ago.
So I'm sure at some point we'll probably get a Challenge 296, probably.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah. So there we can see that the car of Vance Kearney has just been moved out of harm's way. So you can see the blackening to the white bodywork, where the flames had been licking out the side of the car. Yeah, I think already in Europe and possibly in America, I'm not quite sure what they're doing with the Asia Pacific Championship, because that's a bit up in the air at the moment. But yeah, I think already they know that it's going to be a phased introduction of that car, so it might be a period of time where you've got the likes of the 488 Evo and the 296 are both eligible, and then in a few years' time it will become an exclusively 296 championship, and that's, say, Europe, but what happens in the UK might be a year or two after that again, who knows?
Yeah, of course, and it's not only just what cars are out there, but also what is popular to race, because the 488s these days are very popular, and it's one good thing about the Challenge series across the world, kind of like I suppose like the Porsche series as well, the Cup series, is that you've got, if you have a Cup car, you can race it if you wanted to, in the UK, in Europe. If you wanted to take it to Asia, Australasia, you could as well. And you know that you're racing in the same car, and they often have sort of world finals or European finals and one-off events, which are pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and some of these cars I'm sure would have been in those back in the heyday when that was the current model of car. So we're not that far away. We're not going to go green this time through. The lights are still on the safety car, so we're going to have at least one further lap behind the safety car before we get things underway. And all of this is sort of eating into the race time for all of the correct reasons, because there's nothing else we could have done. But it does mean that we've already had a third of the race now. They are about to complete lap number 4, but we've only really had about half a racing lap, haven't we, before the safety car was deployed?
It really was just half a racing lap, but hopefully we should get about 15 minutes after this lap. Hopefully we'll be able to go green at the end of this one. That would allow us about 15 minutes of racing, which is still a decent amount of time, probably, what's that, 7 or 8 laps of racing, which would be plenty enough for these drivers to get their teeth into the Snetterton 300 circuit. Quite a long circuit, actually, after the addition of the 300 infield section. Nice tight and twisty bits, some technical corners, a few off and on camber. Despite it being quite a flat plot of land, there are some camber changes in that infield section.
Yeah, and it's a circuit that's got a bit of everything, hasn't it? It's got that infield technical section, it's got some slow heavy braking areas, the likes of the Wilson hairpin and Agostini, but then it's also got the very fast corners. Ritchie's turn 1, very quick corner. You've got the flat out pretty much bomb hole, and then you've got again from there flat through Coram. So it's got a little bit of everything, hasn't it, really, Snetterton?
It does. I always liked Snetterton when I drove it. I thought it actually is quite a good challenge, because you do have to sort of also balance the setup of the car with fast corners and slow corners, and I've experienced it mostly in single seaters, and you had to think, right, well, I can whack some aero on for the infield, but then I'm slow down the straight, and then if you take it all off, then you skate around the infield.
And they're big long straights as well, aren't they?
They are not short straights, especially the one on the back straight, which goes into Brundle and Nelson, which is also a really fun section, one of my favourite sections of track, because it really feels nice. It's slightly cambered in as you go under the bridge, and you can brake really late, and you hook the curb up, and then the weight transfer as you then release it through Nelson is quite good fun, but you have to watch out for that big sausage curb on the inside.
You do have to watch out for the sausage curb.
The block of flats on the inside of the corner.
Yeah, you don't want to be clonking that, do you? Whether it be in a Ferrari or a single seater or anything at all. So, and of course, we've got some new track limits that have been introduced by Motorsport UK as well. So the contact patch, i.e. the tyre, now cannot go beyond the white line where that's painted around the circuit, or if there's a curb after that, and it has to be the red and white painted curb in the case of Snetterton, it can go to the edge of that curb, but nothing of the contact patch, even a millimetre, should go beyond the red and white painted curb. So those are new rules that have just been introduced recently, and all of the drivers are having to sort of re-educate, aren't they? Lights are still on the safety car, I noticed.
Oh, just gone out. Just to spite you there, Mark. We're waiting for Mark to say the safety car lights hadn't gone out. But yes, a bulletin was released at the 1st of... Well, the rules have been slightly updated as of the 1st of June, so as you mentioned, can't go beyond the white line or the curb with any part of the tyre, whereas previously it was the inside edge of the tyre. You could hang a wheel, but looks like we're ready to get going once again.
So Peter Smith is going to want to get his foot down. It's going to be a single file restart this time through. He can decide when he wants to go, and he now punches the accelerator as he heads out of Murray's and over the start-finish line. There's no overtaking until they reach the control line, albeit by the look of things there, did we have Matthew Wilton go through and ahead of Richard Dougal? Yes, we did, showing that he has gained a place. Now, he should not have done that until they got to the start-finish line, and for my money, he was ahead before they got to the start line.
Yes, potentially you could be calling under the watchful eye of the stewards and the race directors to see if that was a legitimate move there, but some pressure being applied, very close into the Wilson hairpin, as I've now been educated that it's not the Montreal hairpin anymore, but these two fighting it out in two different Ferraris, but clearly quite evenly matched at this stage of the race.
Yeah, it's the 488 of Matthew Wilton. It's the older 360 in the hands of Richard Dougal, and Matthew Wilton, having gained the place as they came over the start-finish line, was showing in 3rd place rather than 4th where he ought to have been, is now looking to try and make a break and pull away a little bit. So in towards the braking area for Agostini. 15 minutes of the race still to go. We can see that Peter Smith is already starting to disappear up the road in the lead of the race, and Darren Goes, who finished 2nd in the 2nd of the 2 races at Donington Park, is already starting to fall away from him, but Darren Goes also has a fair amount of daylight between himself and the squabbling pack behind. Another good fight that we've got going on at the moment is Tim Cairns, who is busy fighting away with Giuseppe Coletti. Those two cars together heading in towards Oggies, and I think Coletti's going to go through and ahead. Yes, he does.
A nice little cutback move there from Coletti, just cutting underneath the exit of Oggies. Oggies is a strange corner because you kind of have... It's almost like a 90-degree corner that continues on for quite a long time. It's very easy to kind of run wide, and you have to get out of the throttle, and potentially that's what happened to Cairns and allowed Coletti to go through, but potentially he will be looking to get right on the back of him and maybe return the favour shortly.
Yep, so the pack of cars heading down towards the bottom of the Bentley Straight, so through Brundle, through Nelson. Fastest lap of the race is with our race leader, but of course we only had the one single, really, or half a flying lap, so we're likely to be down into maybe the 2-minute bracket for the fastest lap of this race. The battle to watch at the moment, I would say, for 2nd and for 3rd place, because now that we've had the change with Giuseppe Coletti going through and ahead of Tim Cairns is now starting to fall into the clutches of Nick Carey behind. So the two 360s, the two red 360s towards the tail end of the field, involved in a good battle, but Matthew Wilton and Richard Dougal for 3rd and 4th is another good battle we need to watch. We can see how weaving around there is Nick Carey trying to unlock the door, but I think Tim Cairns will still just be ahead as they head towards the braking area for Ritchie's.
Yeah, just about. Ritchie's isn't really an overtaking opportunity unless you get alongside before you begin braking, because it's only a rub on the brakes and the apex speed is very, very high. But it's also good to see 2 novice drivers with those crosses on the back of the car having a great race. And those novice crosses, of course, dictating or demonstrating that those drivers are in one of their first 6 races in a car on their licence.
Yep, so a good way if you want to race Ferraris. It's a good starting point, the Bell Sports Challenge Series, very professionally run under the coordination of Tom King and the team at Mark Yates, just outside of St Albans, which is where Bell Sport and Classic are based. This fight still continuing. Tim Cairns in the number 7 car, still managing to keep Nick Carey's aspirations at bay. Moves to almost weave around to be defensive on the run up towards Hamilton there, but I think that Nick Carey was too far away really to do that. But it looks as though Tim Cairns was just wanting to cover off any potential move. They thread their way out of Oggies and start to build the speed again as you come out of Oggies up towards Williams, which again, you know, it's a quick corner, Williams, but it's a corner that's very easy to carry a bit too much speed in, or don't get your turning point right and then run wide on the exit. And if you get off the throttle coming through Williams because you don't get it right midway through, you then compromise your run all the way down that Bentley straight.
It's a tricky corner, Williams, and it's sort of, you feel like it should be a 90-degree corner, but it's almost closer to sort of halfway between 90 and 180 degrees, like 120 degrees, and it goes on for so long and such an open radius. I think it is ever so slightly off camber. I'm not sure about that, but it feels that way, and you have to carry a lot of speed in, but it's very easy to try and get back on the power too early, because it goes on for so long, and then as you mentioned, you lift off on the exit and you can lose tenths up to a second, maybe even down the back straight if you don't get it quite right.
Yeah, if you lift off for a split second and on your delta you're maybe exactly on the same delta point that you were on your previous lap. If you've lifted off though, you'll definitely be half a second down by the time you get towards the bottom of the Bentley straight in most cars.
You'll just be hemorrhaging time. You'll see it ticking down, and a lot of these cars will probably have installed something like a race logic system where they can have a GPS on board and it'll tell you where on circuit you're gaining or losing compared to your best sector, your best lap time, your best lap time ever. Or when we see a move on the outside of Riches at turn 1, that's a bold manoeuvre to go around the outside there, but giving each other enough racing room. Yeah,
that was Tim Cairns, who was almost unpicked there by Nick Carey, but just about managed to hang on to the place. So it's still Tim Cairns in 8th place, Nick Carey in 9th place, but Nick showing his determination to try and squeeze through and ahead. They are still together. Now, this is for 8th and 9th position. Nothing to choose between the two cars at this stage. We had the fastest lap of the race for our race leader last time through, just to pick up on that. 1 minute 59.288 for Peter Smith. So I did say I thought the fastest lap would be around 2 minutes. Well, yeah, it's qualifying pace, and that lap from Peter Smith is only a quarter of a second shy of his pole position time from qualifying.
That's good going in this race, and clearly learning the circuit more and more as they do more laps. And that's the back of the field there. That was, I think that is Zach Carey getting very close to the edge of the circuit, using all the road and or potentially a little bit more, throwing up the dust. But that's what you need to do to get the most out of the of any racing car, is make sure you make the corners as wide as possible. So right to the outside for the entry of the corner, touch the apex in the middle, and then right to the outside at the exit, but without going too far and breaking those track limit regulations.
Yeah, those new rules that were coming, as Piers alluded to, on the 1st of June. We did have a change for 3rd and 4th last time through, because the number 83 car of Richard Dougal, that's the white car with the light green livery to it, the 360 challenge car, which leads Class 2 at the moment, went back and ahead of Mark Wilton's 488. So back to 3rd place goes Richard Dougal. Over the start-finish line, there's Darren Goes. He is in 2nd position at the moment, Darren, who we've seen racing a raft of different things over the years, the likes of Renault Clios and Seat Leon Super Copas, amongst other things, but has always hankered after driving big sports cars and is absolutely loving the opportunity to compete in the Bell Sports Challenge Series. He's 2nd, but he is now 10.5 seconds shy of the race leader at the moment, and both 1st and 2nd place are in the same class as well. They're both in Class 4, which means they are both driving the 488 Challenge spec Ferrari.
The Clios are probably a little bit different to drive than these Ferrari beasts.
Slightly, I would imagine.
I haven't had the luxury of driving a Clio or a 488 or a 458, but they're fairly different cars, and it's cool to see the different drivers using slightly differing lines going through the Agostini hairpin. A couple of drivers going for a more V'ing off line, so going in earlier, getting it stopped and coming out, whereas we're looking at the number 83 driver there. Of course, that's Richard Dougal, who was going a very classical brake late in a straight line and cut back for a late apex.
Yep, so Richard Dougal in his newly acquired 3rd place. You can see the 488 of Mark Wilton behind that he got through and passed on the previous lap. So Richard Dougal now propelling his 360 down the Bentley straight. Mark Wilton chasing him all of the way. His lights ablaze, but he's now dropped down into 4th position overall, Mark Wilton, the red car with the black roof. And that will put him 3rd in Class 4 at the moment for the 488 Challenge spec cars, whereas Richard Dougal leads Class 2 currently, which is for the 430s. Oh, sorry, for the 430s. Now there is Mick Dwayne. Mick Dwayne stopped out on circuit somewhere, and is that car facing the wrong way?
That's Oggy's, I believe. Must have just got on the power a bit early and looped it round, and Oggy's done the right thing, waiting for an opportunity to turn around when no cars are coming. Not a very tight turning circle on these 360s or 430s. Are there, Mark? Because we're having to take to the gravel, and those tyres will be dirty for the next few corners. He'll have to take it a little bit easy.
Yep, so that's the 360 of Mick Dwayne, the man who's based in Newark, has raced Ferraris sporadically for a good number of years, actually, in a range of different championships. Now, the fight for third is back on again, because Mark Wilton, having been picked off by Richard Dougal, is now back with him again, and is looking to try and propel the 488 through and back into the podium-paying places once more. So Richard Dougal again trying to V off the apex of Wilson, getting nice and early on the throttle coming out of the corner, utilising all of the curb but no more. The brake lights come on at exactly the same point as they go through Palmer, which again is a very difficult corner because it's quick in, but it's also adverse camber on the way out, isn't it? Slightly drops away.
Yeah, it's a good corner as well. It was always good fun to drive, and you carry a lot more speed into it than you sometimes think, because it almost tightens up, so the entry is quite long and open, and then it just nips up at the exit, so you have to carry a lot of speed into the apex, but then kind of sort it out in the middle and not run wide on the exit, which is, as you mentioned, just drops away right when you need the last little bit of grip. Yeah,
it's a very well-designed circuit now. The car of Matthew Wilton is still looking to try and steal third place away. Richard Dougal runs a little bit wide coming out of Oggy's. The door was open, but Matthew Wilton couldn't quite draw himself alongside. The extra grunt of the 488 in a straight line might tell as they head down the Bentley Straight, so he's sitting in the slipstream, and the extra grunt is telling, and through goes Matthew Wilton back into third place. Richard Dougal drops to fourth, but still leads the class.
Yes, it might be worth mentioning that some of these cars might have slightly differing electronic aids, so the older cars maybe having slightly less, whereas the newest 488, I know, for example, that probably have ABS and traction control.
With various mode settings on that as well, so you can dial it in or out. Yeah, whereas it's more of an analog system, shall we say, less electronic trickery in some of the older 360s.
Yes, but it is almost part of the challenge in itself, is learning how to get the most out of those electronic systems, and that is what a lot of the pro drivers in GT3 can do so well, because the whole things with GT3 and sports cars with Mark, you're pointing at something on the screen.
No, I think it's just a rear light that's hanging on by the wire at the back of Richard Dougal's car. So over the start-finish line he goes, and I think it's just one of the rear light clusters that's popped out.
Oh, okay.
And it's just dangling around as it still sits there on the wire at the moment.
Okay.
So I picked it up a few laps ago and wasn't quite sure what it was.
But you're just finishing, I was saying with the pro drivers will be able to get the most out of the traction control settings and ABS settings, because, oh yeah, there you go, that is definitely a light, isn't it? But that should hopefully not be anything to worry about really for the rest of the race. It shouldn't harm the car at all. But you know, it's one thing learning how to drive the cars, but also you have to learn how to get the most out of the traction control systems and ABS systems, because it's very easy with those systems to get to about maybe a second or two off the ultimate pace, but then you have to then kind of work with and around them to get to the last couple of seconds.
Yeah, it's how much you can lean on that system then, isn't it? You lean on it too much and you end up slowing yourself down because the system's taking over and not you, but lean on it enough so that you're on the edge of it, just wanting to kick in. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's a fine balance, as everything is in motorsport. It's a real fine balance, isn't it?
Yes, the whole point of them is that they can allow you to get to the limit, or to stay near the limit of the tyre's grip for as long as possible. And of course, the way you do that is how you can get those final few tenths. And a lot of these drivers will be enjoying getting to learn that. And you know, it's one of the things about motorsport that is so good, is there's so many different variables that you can almost never perfect it. You can't perfect motorsport. Even Max Verstappen on his pole lap at the weekend will go, oh, I lost a tenth there and a bit there, and the exit was a bit shoddy there, and that sort of thing. So no matter your level, there's always more to find.
Well, even if you could perfect it, Max Verstappen still wouldn't be happy. Anyway, right, moving on. There, down the straight goes the Ferrari 430 of Michael O'Sullivan. So he is running in, what's that, 5th position at the moment, is Michael O'Sullivan. So down towards the braking area for Brundle and for Nelson, in the sole remaining white car that we have in the field. The clock is ticking down as well, so we've only got just over 3.5 minutes of the race still to go at this stage. And Michael O'Sullivan hasn't really got anybody to play with. He's 18 seconds shy of the cars ahead, but he's got about 20 seconds in hand from the car behind him, so he's sort of on his own at the moment in no man's land.
Yeah, no man's land, but probably having a great time while doing it. And I must say, is it the 430?
At 4:30.
Yeah, this is probably in white. I think this car just looks excellent. The white and black, it's simple. And he's got the white helmet and the white gloves on to match. It's a left-hand drive, of course, with it being a Ferrari as well. So you know, it looks great. And the only thing is that the one blue wing mirror, which must be a nod to something.
Hadn't spotted that. Has he got the white race suit on as well? It's not the Stig in there, is it?
I haven't seen the white race suit.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know that. It's but the white helmet and gloves. You can see in a moment when he turns the steering wheel into the Wilson hairpin. There you go. Yep, there's the white gloves, matching the car, matching the helmet. Looks great. I love those cars.
Brilliant. So over the start finish line will come Giuseppe Carlotti. So this is his Ferrari 360. Runs in 6th place overall and is the Class 1 leader according to the timing screen at the moment. So through the right-hander goes Giuseppe Carlotti, and was involved in a good little squabble earlier on, but seems to have escaped the squabble of Tim Cairns and Nick Carey. Is now pulled away quite substantively from them, has Giuseppe Carlotti. What, he's about 8 seconds up the road now at the wheel of his car. As for Tim Cairns and Nick Carey, well, those two cars are still busy squabbling away at the moment, still fighting over position, but they also need to watch their mirrors, because we saw Mick Dwayne have that spin, didn't we, at Oggies. He's now catching back up with them again, so whether he's going to get there or not with a couple of minutes to go, I'm not entirely sure, but he's chipping away as he recovers after his spin. Yeah,
Dwayne definitely has a bit more pace in that car, showing he had a bit more pace in qualifying, so potentially on the final lap might be a three-way battle for the lower end of the top 10. Just those two. Yeah, there they are. They're the two cars fighting away. Still almost nose to tail. They're having a great battle and probably step out of the car with big smiles on their faces. And but they're not quite done yet. I'm sure they'll be vying out for that position right until the end of the race.
Yeah, I mean, you can step out the car and have a nice smile when you've had a good battle, haven't you? And even more so with this, because there's no championship points up for grabs. Each one is just a one-off race, and that sort of removes some of the pressure as well, doesn't it? Because you're not chasing championship points.
No, you don't have to. You know, if you have a race and potentially something goes wrong, you're not like, oh, that's ruined the whole year, for example. You just think, oh, well, that's a shame, but we'll go again later on today, or maybe even at the next round as we having a look. And there is Dwayne in the background looming.
Yeah, I said he was catching, and, well, he's almost there now, so it's still the same order.
Whoa.
It's still Tim Cairns.
A big slide out of Nelson there from Dwayne in the background, using all of the horsepower he had available to him.
Yeah, he's pushing hard still. You can see how he spun, because he is absolutely trying to wring the neck and get as much performance as he can out of his 360, closing in on the pair of red Ferraris that lie ahead. They'll be heading on to their final lap this next time through as well. So 7th, 8th and 9th altogether, as our race leader is already through Brundle and Nelson for the final time with 35 seconds remaining on the clock. I don't think he'll get over the start-finish line before the clock ticks to 0.
Not quite, it'll be close, but that car and driver combination clearly pretty much in tune, because he's pulled out a 12, nearly 13-second gap over Goes in second place, and looks great on circuit, everything in harmony. And coming around the final corner to potentially take the checkered flag. It'll be very close.
It will be very close. He might sneak a further lap out of this one. It's going to be nip and tuck stuff as to whether he can. And with 10 seconds to go, I think he will. Yep, so over the start-finish line now. 6 seconds remain on the clock. So he is going to continue round for a further lap. So our timing screen suggesting checker flag is out, but it certainly didn't come out on the gantry. So on to the last lap of the race goes our race leader. And he's still set the fastest lap of the race. That was a while ago now with that 1:59.288. That has not as yet been bettered. He leads by 14 seconds, and Mick Dwayne has already picked off one car, and now he's about to pick off Tim Cairns, because he got past Nick Carey a while ago, and now he's got past Tim Cairns. And look up the road, Giuseppe Carlotti's just up the road as well. So on to the final lap goes the number 77 car of Mick Dwayne. 2 places gained. He might gain another, you know.
Yeah, because he's got an extra lap, of course, because these guys are a bit further around the behind on the lap than our overall leader, Smith. But Smith at the front of the field also lapping very consistently. That last lap only maybe half a tenth slower than his fastest lap of the race, as we see another wobble there from Dwayne.
Yeah, so Mick Dwayne is, you talk about leaning on any driver aids, well, Mick Dwayne is certainly leaning on the traction control, depending on what settings or how it's configured, or even if it's got it on the 360. So he's overtaken those 2 red cars of Nick Carey to start with, and then the number 7 car of Tim Cairns, and now is setting about and closing in all of the time on Giuseppe Carlotti. So through the first sector of the lap, this time through, Mick Dwayne was the best part of a second and a half quicker than Giuseppe Carlotti. Through the second sector of the lap, the second part of the lap, he was also quicker, and by the look of things, as they come up towards the end of this lap, he's not going to try anything in the braking area for Murray's, but looking at the pace pace that he's got, he should be able to go through.
Here we go, and he's got a good run out of the last corner. Those cars will be fairly evenly matched in a straight line, but he's looking around the outside, going down the main straight. It's going to be pretty much neck and neck as they go over the line. Hadn't quite got an overlap, and he's looking to the inside of Richards. It's going to be a late lunge. Not this time.
No, not at all. Mick Dwain's running the rear spoiler on his car. Giuseppe Carlotti hasn't got that opportunity. As over the start-finish line comes Peter Smith, this time to take the checkered flag and win round 3 of the 2023 Bell Sports Challenge Series. Lights the flag victory for Peter Smith. Darren Goes will come through in a fairly distant second position, but Peter Smith waving to the marshals and the crowd as he has taken the checkered flag. And we still need to try and work out as what Mick Dwain is doing, and is he going to try and work his way through and past Giuseppe Carlotti. There goes Darren Goes now, second place over the start-finish line. So solid second place for him, 17 seconds adrift. No, Mick Dwain hasn't done it as yet. He's going to have another nibble heading up towards Agostini. Yeah, he's got the inside line, and whilst the door is open, I think the car of Nick Carey is going to want to try and squeeze through as well. Yep, so 2 places lost for Giuseppe Carlotti. Nick Carey was a little bit wide though, Tim Cairns, I should say, was a little bit wide heading out of Agostini, which might offer up Giuseppe Carlotti the opportunity to squeeze his way back through.
Good opportunistic move there from Cairns, just snipping through on the inside when Carlotti was pushed wide. Nearly a bit of contact, but looks like they managed to avoid it. But Dwain has managed to make amends for that mistake he made earlier on in the race with a good move up the inside of Agostini, which is one of the main overtaking opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that was for the lead of the class as well, looking at the timing screen. So that would be the lead of Class 1, which is for the Ferrari 360s. So even more important to sneak that for bragging rights more than anything, that he's able to go through. And poor old Giuseppe Carlotti losing not just 1 but 2 places as the door was open, and Tim Cairns thought, yep, thank you very much, I'll sneak my way through. So these are going to be the final 4 cars to take the checkered flag, because everybody else ahead of them is already through, and then once we get these 4 cars over the start-finish line, we'll be able to confirm the results for you. And what is, remember, just the first of 2 Bell Sports Challenge Series races here at Snetterton, because the second of the races is coming up later on over the course of this afternoon. So out of Coram, in towards the braking area for Murray's for the final time. They all work their way. Giuseppe Carlotti, I thought, might lose a further place there, but Nick Carey was just a little bit too late on the brakes coming in towards Murray's, and therefore slowed his progress towards the checkered flag. So it's Mick Dwain that wins Class 1 in the end and finishes in the final place inside the top 6. Tim Cairns was there in 7th, Giuseppe Carlotti was in 8th in the end, and Nick Carey finished in 9th place. But the win goes the way of the man who qualified on pole, led every lap, set the fastest lap, and claims the win. Peter Smith, perfect race as far as he is concerned, but of course he's got it all to do again later on, and might have a bit more opposition if whatever problems befell Nigel Jenkins, who qualified on the outside of the front row of the grid. Maybe they can fix his car and we'll see him out for race number 2. Let's confirm the results for you then for the 3rd race of the season for the Bell Sports Challenge Series, the first of 2 here at Snetterton. The win goes the way of Peter Smith, with Darren Goes in 2nd place and Matthew Wilton completing the top 3. In 4th place, that's where we see the car of Richard Dougal. 5th place was Michael O'Sullivan off the back of the grid. Mick Dwain with a good recovery drive following his spin to finish in 6th position ahead of Tim Cairns, who was 7th, Giuseppe Carlotti, who was in 8th place, and Nick Carey was there in 9th position. So that's it for the moment for the Bell Sports Challenge Series here at Snetterton. Remember, we do have a further race for them coming up later on today. That's scheduled to go out onto the circuit at around about 2:05 this afternoon. So from everybody here at Snetterton, thanks for joining us for round 3. We'll be back for round 4 later on. Goodbye.